Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of The Mind of Evil, the second story of the 8th season of classic Doctor Who, starring John Pertwee as the third Doctor. The Mind of Evil is the 56th story overall. It's 6 episodes long and is written by Don Houghton. So the original color tape of this story is still missing, but I think it was all of it was actually recolored for the 2013 DVD release. So the plot of The Mind of Evil is as follows. Professor Keller has created a machine that can pacify even the most dangerous of criminals. But when the Doctor and Joe arrive at Stanmore Prison for a demonstration, things start to go horribly wrong, especially when they discover that the Doctor's old enemy, the Master, is responsible for the machine. What could he possibly want from the criminals, and what connects him to an impending World Peace Conference? So that is the plot of The Mind of Evil. Mind of Evil. What an outstanding story. Oh, this is actually my second favorite Pertwee story in all the 24 stories in his era, and this is what actually cemented the fact that John Pertwee is actually one of my favorite classic Doctor ever. So the production of the story was actually very good, and it was actually very well thought of. The script was really good. It gave us some great moments and some great dialogue as well. And I thought the main Stanmore prison set was very great, and I liked the bits of location filming that took place, especially like the exterior of the Stanmore prison. It actually looked like Dracula's castle, as Joe mentioned in episode 1. I love the music of the story. It definitely made the story even more intense, especially the Killer Machine theme, and that also really made the story even tense. Whenever that played, you knew something was gonna go down, and I really liked the direction by Timothy Coombe. He made the story really great, and it's a shame he wasn't invited back for any more stories because he did actually blow the BBC's budget for this story. I like the visuals of this story as well. Trippy scenes such as the killer machine teleporting itself around the prison, how it was used to implant fear on its victims and to kill. Like for instance, how it almost killed the Doctor with his apparent fear of fire after based on his experience in Inferno, which he actually mentioned to Joe at the start of episode 2. We also got some questionable effects and scenes, such as the episode 2 cliffhanger when. What's his name again? Yeah, when Chin Lee. The American Senate thought that Chin Lee was a dragon, and then when episode 3 came around, the Doctor, the Brigadier, and I think the other Chinese delegate person was actually in the room. We saw him being attacked by a dragon. We knew there was actually a man in a suit. And the man in the dragon suit just faffing on all over the place. The story was brilliantly written, and I would actually say this is Don Houghton's best script, even though Inferno was his only other script, and that's another fantastic story, and you can watch my review for that, but I actually do prefer Mind of Evil to Inferno, to say the least. I love how the two storylines established in the first 2-3 episodes were interwoven with each other. Storyline 1 being the whole Killer Machine and Stanmore Prison storyline, and storyline 2 was the International Peace Conference being put in jeopardy because of the Chinese delegate, in which he was killed, and all because of Chin Li. And the Master and somewhat a bit of Chin Li are actually what caused the two storylines to be joined together, because the Master was actually the one that made the Keller Machine, going by the name of Emil Keller, and I think he wanted to try and use the mind of machine and to try and steal a missile and trying to create a war. So I think to try and cause a war between the UK and China, and that's how the Master would want to try and take over the world. And obviously, and I love how ambitious the Master's plans were to try and start this war, and it was pretty good as well. I definitely established the Master, making him a very dastardly villain for the Doctor. And I love the James Bond feel to this story, and I would actually say that this story is actually, The Mind of Evil is actually similar to the Pierce Brosnan Bond movie Tomorrow Never Dies, because I think both of them actually involve plot in which the war between UK and China for which was being manipulated by the Big Bad because the Master he wanted world domination, and Elliot Carver in not in Tomorrow Never Dies, he just wanted to create a war so he can get like exclusive media coverage of what was going on, and then the potential one. Obviously, Bond had to stop it. It's so, and I also liked how the plot of the Doctor trying to escape Earth using the TARDIS in the Master's dematerialization circuit, which he actually stole from in Terror of the Autons. I love how that was brought back in this story, and how pretty much became a factor towards the end of the story, and it was quite cool as well because in the end the Doctor doesn't actually succeed. Well, he does get the Master's dematerialization circuit, but then there was a bit of a struggle, and then the Master was able to take it and then escape Earth, and obviously the Doctor was very frustrated about this, and the Doctor was quite happy that he was going to see the Master. No, that's a reason for the other story. But obviously the Doctor wasn't happy that the Master still has his freedom and the Doctor's still stuck on Earth. And I also like how international diplomatic scenarios were introduced in this story, and how it also plays a part in The Mind of Evil as well. And as I mentioned before, I love how intense this story was, especially with the Keller theme, and the whole prison siege storyline was rather intense with Mela taking control, and when the Keller machine was becoming unstable, it pretty much upped the ante of the craziness. Elements of the story. I would say the acting was brilliant, to say the least, and everyone involved did a great job, whether it was a major role or a minor part or whatever. John Pertwee, I think he did a very good job here. I love his acting and how he really saw the effects of the Keller machine when he was at its mercy. And it was quite impressive. I think this is probably one of Pertwee's strengths of being the Doctor, because he can pull the goofiest facial expressions, and even though it's quite a serious scenario, but he can actually pull it off and still make it effective, and I really enjoyed that. And I also like the part in episode 6 when the Brigadier came to save him from the nick of time, and Mela was about to shoot the Doctor after a bit of a diversion was caused, but then obviously the Doctor, or the third Doctor being the third Doctor, instead of thanking the Brigadier, the Doctor just berates him for coming in late, and I actually thought that was a typical Doctor Brigadier camaraderie, and I was actually impressed in how Pertwee was able to speak, I think it's Mandarin, to some of the Chinese characters. That was pretty cool. Katie Manning, she was great as Jo. She didn't really have a whole lot to do compared to Terror of the Autons, but she still did a very good job, and she even named The Mind of Evil to be her favourite story she filmed, and you can tell she really had fun filming the story. And I also like how Jo was able to volunteer to stay behind at the prison to try and keep things in order when the Brigadier summoned the Doctor to the International Peace Conference in episode 2. Nicholas Courtney, on the other hand, actually did a lot in this story, and I really liked his performance as the Brigadier, and I thought it was a really cool part when he was pretending to be a milkman to try and gain entry into Stanmore Prison to save the Doctor and Jo and maintain order in the prison. And I think he had fun as well. And Benton was okay. I found it funny how he was being reprimanded by the Brigadier for losing Chinley after she stunned him with that device, which I actually forgotten what it was called, and John Levine really saw that scene as well, how he was just it was also very funny, and he does actually stand out in other parts in the story as well, but obviously Yates actually does stand out a bit more because he does get a lot of action in, especially when he was able to track down the Master on the motorbike after was attacked by the prison guards, but the Master actually did catch him and pretty much tied him up, but Yates was able to escape and report back to the Doctor, I think. But that was also pretty cool. So, onto the side cast of the story. They were all quite good, to say the least. First off, we had Chin Li. She was the assistant or secretary to the Chinese delegate, and I think she was responsible for his death. She was also with the Master when he was pretending to be Professor Emil Keller to introduce the Keller machine in the Stanmore prison. And the Master was controlling her, and she was pretty much carrying out his orders reluctantly, and then the Doctor was able to break free from the Master's control, and we don't actually see her after episode 3, and I like Chini. I think she stood out for me the most because she did have a vital part to play. I think the actress played her very well, and it made sense for her not to appear afterwards because she didn't really have any purpose of outside of the episode 3, because the whole international peace conference storyline was pretty much done, and then they had to transfer the main attention back to the prison storyline, and it wouldn't have really made sense if Chinley was pretty much in the prison. Second off, we have George Barnum. He had the killer machine on him and in the beginning, and it backfired, and it pretty much gave him a childlike mentality. I think he grew fond of Joe a little bit, and then he didn't really appear often, but then during the prison siege, but then he'll just come out in the most random of occasions because he still has the childlike mentality, and then I think he does get better, I think, and then the master obviously kills him, and I was a bit sad when the master actually killed him. We had Dr. Summers. He was the prison doctor, and I think he mainly looked after Bonham. I liked his character and his interactions with Joe. We had Vosper, and he was the main prisoner. Well, he was a prisoner, and he worked with Mailer along with Charlie to keep an eye on the prisoners when Mailer was working with the master for most of it. He was killed by the killer machine, unfortunately, and we had Corporal Bell. Not really a major character, but she works for UNIT, and she doesn't really do a whole lot, but she does return for the close of Axos. So on to the main villains. First off, we have the Master returning for an instant rematch with the Doctor. Roger Delgado was amazing in the story, and you can really believe he's evil, and he's a lot more menacing here than he was in Terror of the Autons. Even though in Terror of the Autons he was pretty much just killing people left, right and centre, but then in The Man of Evil he was actually manipulating people, and he even threatened to harm Joe. I'm trying to think in some parts of the story, and I would actually say that I think that's what made this story is actually what made the Roger Delgado's Master to be the very best. I say that this story is probably one of Delgado's best performances as the Master. Up next we have Mailer. He's a prisoner, and he took advantage of the prison siege, and he worked with the Master. He was a good villain, he was well acted, and then the Brigadier killed him at the start of episode 6. And last we have the killer machine. The machine has an alien inside of it, and it feeds on negative impulses, but it becomes deadlier and when it starts moving around the prison, and that made the machine not scary in my opinion. The only nitpick of this story that I have is that the cliffhangers for episodes 1, 3 and 4 are pretty much the same. All of them have the Doctor at the mercy of the killer machine, but episode 4 is kind of different because it has Joe at its mercy as well, along with the Doctor. Personally, I would have put Joe in the episode 3 cliffhanger other than the Doctor to make things more tense, but I still love The Man of Evil for what it is. To conclude, The Man of Evil is a crazy story jam-packed with memorable and intense moments, and I give The Man of Evil a perfect 10 out of 10. So my next review will be The Close of Axos, so look out for that. Thanks for watching this review. Please let me know your thoughts of The Man of Evil and this review, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Until then, see you later.